Hello and welcome to Game Design Hour. I'm your host, Miles Goldsmith, and on this episode, I'm interviewing two of the game developers behind the video game Carly and the Reaperman. In the game Carly and the Reaperman, you either play as Carly or the Reaperman. Carly plays on a regular screen while the Reaperman plays in VR. The two players work together to solve puzzles and finish the platforming levels. You're also able to play the game in a single-player mode in VR. Without any further ado, let's get into the interview.
I'm Johan. I'm the lead developer behind at Reaperman Studios, and we are the developers behind Carly and the Reaperman.
Yeah, and my name is Michael Krusman. I'm a game designer at Reaperman Studios.
Awesome.
And together with you.
Yeah, we are both.
So, what was the first thing that really sparked your interest in creating video games?
For me, it was the fact that I always had computers that were out of date. I always got the handover computer from someone who didn't want them anymore, and so I never had the games that my friends had. So I needed to create them myself.
I think games being a big interest, or the biggest interest of mine, I think, since I was small. So I think it sparked it's kind of the ultimate imagination creation tool.
And you've always created games on paper and stuff.
Yeah. I love it. It doesn't matter if it's role play games with friends or trying to come up with ideas for games since I was small. So yeah.
How did you all first think of the original idea for Carly and the Reaperman?
When we started the studio, you have to stop me if I'm misremembering. But when we started the studio, Mick came up with a bunch of ideas, like 10 or 20 or something like that.
Yeah, we're throwing it on the wall as if it stuck.
Yeah, and I think,
or what you want, sorry.
and I think like the second idea maybe on that list that we decided to try out was an idea that Mickey had, where the problem with 3D platformers is always the camera. And so Mickey had an idea that what if you are the camera? So you have someone playing a platformer and his friend is the camera with his face through VR. So that was kind of the initial idea, I think.
Actually, it was because it was a collaboration between me and Johan. It was, I wanted to, the idea was that you control the camera with your head and playing the game. So we had 100% full control over the camera playing this little person in the game. And then Johan was like trying things out. And that's somewhere there you said, what about dividing them?
Okay, that might be the case.
That's how I read it. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it melted together because it became really fast a co-op focused experience.
Yeah. The very first thing we did was having this Unity like stock platform character and two platforms that the person in VR could move. And the character could jump between those two platforms. And I think we toyed with that for like hours, just moving those two blocks and having it. It immediately sparked something, and we found this extremely fun. Initially in the game, there was no other camera than the camera on the head of the VR player, but we quickly realized, or maybe not that quickly, but sometimes during the development, we realized that was nauseating and not a very nice.
No,
because it's very irritating to have a camera that's looking around. So we decided against that and just kept. Now in the game, you can switch between a regular third-person camera and moving to the eyes of the Reaperman.
Yeah, when the co-op kind of ruined that idea, kind of.
Yeah.
But it became better in every other aspect. So
yeah.
And I mean, I don't think to solve that 3D camera maybe wasn't that good idea from the
start. No. So what different pieces of media inspired different elements of the game?
We were three people doing this game. So it was me, I was doing the programming, most of the programming, and Mickey was doing most of the game design. And we had a graphics designer, and he should really have been here for that question. So we'll have to answer for him then. I think, and you have to stop me here because you were also quite integral in many. I mean, Studio Ghibli, I know, is something that we all love. So there's definitely some Ghibli and different anime influences there.
Buddha was the graphical artist. He loves two things. but especially some Studio Ghibli movies, of course. But he also loves Luffy, One Piece, the anime.
Yeah,
and I think that's.
Yeah,
but then he also loves Final Fantasy VII, and I really pushed him towards that more.
Yeah, there's a lot of neon signs and stuff. That's and that's very much Final Fantasy VII. And then also, I remember when we decided quite early that this was a game that would be in the afterlife. I happened to read a Swedish novel at that time that was in an afterlife that was not this hellish. It was hellish, but it was not, lava and fire and that kind of hell. It was a big Chinese city where this mother was searching for her child in this dirty Chinese city. So I think early on, I tried to push it a little bit towards that because that resonated in me. But in the end, we skewed away from it. But still, I think our afterlife is a bit different.
And actually, we wanted it to be really bright and sunny.
Yeah.
But the thing was, we only had one graphic designer, so hiding things in the dark was much easier.
Yeah.
So that's why everything went dark.
Yes, and then also Buddha, our graphical artist, he's of Bengal descent, so his parents are from Bangladesh. So a lot of a big part of the both like the theme of the graphics. There are some Bengal letters, or Bangla letters that in Bangla words in there, and a lot of the theme of the game comes from I think it is the liberation war of Bangladesh from India. But I'm a little bit out of my depth there. But there are a lot of hints towards that war. And I think Buddha, in his mind, the girl that you play, Carly, was in that war in some way and died there. And a lot of the characters that you meet in the game have perished in that war.
So pretty much every game has interesting or strange ideas that were in a draft of the game at some point, but ended up getting cut. What were some of those for this game?
I mean, I pushed a lot of levels into the game, for good and worse, or maybe more worse, maybe. But I think we wanted to add more modes, I think.
Yeah,
the time trial mode and stuff.
Yeah, I think answering that question, it's a little bit how you interpret the question, because we had a lot of, in the initial game, all the blocks that we had were just physical, and then you could throw some power up on them to change the way they worked, and we had a lot of those things. And I know that you had level ideas where the Reaperman would have a fan blowing on a sail, and Carter would be in a boat.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of those. I think you had a lot of ideas on how you and a fishing rod. And,
flugsmäller was that in English?
A fly killer.
Fly killer.
A spatula that you kill fires. So there was a lot of these ideas that you had, but as we progressed, we realized that the main thing about our game was cooperation. So we took away everything that didn't cater for cooperation. So, for instance, that sail thing, that was a fun thing, but it was hard to implement. And also, we didn't really find okay, so if the Reaperman is having fun, what should Carly do? And also, all your levels got a much better when we decided this is the feature set. You have these blocks, no more. And Mickey was like, can I have a bouncy block? No, you have these blocks, no more. And I think when that really drove your like imagination, having these, I don't know how many we have in the end, it's maybe 6 or 7 different elements that could be in a level.
Yeah, it's like laser, like 1 or 2 or 3 enemies,
and a few different blocks, and all of those. So Mika had to like, but I mean, 7 different things, 7 times 6. That's a lot of possibilities that you can do. So I think that was good.
And the hardest thing, maybe if we had more time, I think we should have, if we could have put it in the, Carly, what can she do? Like, can she do something more that, of course, is in line what Johan is telling, that does this support collaboration or not?
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe we could have like figure some things out there, or add small things that change the pacing or the variation and stuff, but not too much. But
yeah,
I mean, those kind of things.
But actually, and during the development, we got a lot of feedback from people where, especially in the beginning, before we understood this thing about cooperation, our levels were much more spread out. So maybe the Reaperman was over here building something, and Carly was over here doing something else. And we got a lot of feedback like, I want to be more powerful as Reaperman. I want to be able to call down thunder or lightning, or maybe the Carly player said, I want to destroy stuff. And we did a few of those things, but it always just ended up being more things that you did on your own.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When playing the game in multiplayer, the player is either playing as Carly or the Reaperman, but when playing in single player, it's still pretty much the same experience, but you're playing as both characters. Some games only offer either single player or multiplayer, or they offer 2 very different experiences for the 2 different modes. What made you all want to make this game in a way that can be played in both single player and multiplayer and have a similar experience?
We actually released it as multiplayer only. And to be fair, that was a little bit of a time constraint. And also, so the fact that when we released it, we had an Oculus at the very end. And so when we released it, was either you could play on either Oculus or the HTC Vive. And the HTC Vive single player experience is
very limited.
Very limited, to make an understatement.
At that point, the controllers were,
yeah, they were like touch pads, and it's
horrible.
It's horrible to play single player on a Vive, I think. So for us, we were a bit reluctant to make a single player, but then we at the very end, when we were finishing the game, I created a single player mode in order to iterate faster, because we could always be 2 people, and I didn't want like a controller. So I made like a debugging mode where I could control Carly with the Oculus Touch when we got them. And then we quickly realized that maybe we should make this a real mode.
And became like the 1-player mode or single player mode became, the experience was very focused on doing a lot of things at the same time. And when you played collaboration, then it became more like the collaboration that was the...
Yeah.
So it becomes a bit, they are the same experience, but different in how you experience.
Yeah, you need different skills for sure to finish the game as in single player or multiplayer. But you can say at its core, it is a multiplayer game. We consider it a multiplayer game. All our marketing has been around that, and so single player is more of a. I mean, we still call it single player mode. I think that says something. We consider it like an extra. And I think also, to answer your question, like why we decided to do it the same, when we decided to make a single player, we quickly realized, going through all the levels and going through all the like puzzles, we realized there were only a few places where the game actually became broken or when you were in single player. So we found that most of the puzzles, except for the ones where you see different things, we would still be able to do something puzzly around that. And we had no level where that was the only objective. So that was always just one of the side things. So luckily, I would say,
In the single player mode, you fit controls for 2 different characters into one controller. Were there any challenges you had with fitting all those controls into one set of controllers?
Yeah, I would say the whole 2 different controllers. I mean, it was easier fitting everything into one set of controllers than I had having 2 different controllers, because we had a lot of issues making it work. Just the fact that normally when you do a multiplayer game, you would like detect there's 2 controllers, and you would maybe not be that. It doesn't really matter which controller starts first, and so on. And if you have a 4th controller hooked in, that doesn't matter either. But as far as Unity is concerned, the Oculus Touches, they're just a gamepad. It can't really distinguish between that and like your Xbox controller. So for me, it was a huge headache just getting the right, so that the Reaperman wasn't controlled with the Xbox controller and Carly with the yeah. So yeah, that was a huge pain. But yeah, I don't remember. Did we have a lot of work fitting everything into? I don't think so.
No, it was not tough.
I mean, luckily, I just think we just realized that there was enough buttons, and we could just skip the emotes. I think in single player, Carly can't do any emotes, but then on the other hand, why would you scream at yourself? It doesn't really make sense.
So you can do fist bump.
You can fist bump yourself. Yeah.
Managing scope is a really important aspect of creating video games. How did you work to manage the scope of Carly and the Reaperman while working on it?
We didn't.
We did. Exactly. That was my answer as well. We bloated the scope until it got unmanageable, and then we
forced ourselves
to cut away things. I think at some point we just...
Yeah, but I remember, because it was like we said to ourselves, like 6 months before the release, during Christmas, when we got back from Christmas vacation, I think Johan and I went into a room and said to ourselves, like, okay, if we're going to do this, if this is going to be a game that we are going to release, we have 6 months to do it, then we are out of money.
Yeah.
And we
can release it in June.
And then we worked 24/7. But we didn't. I mean, of course, we tried to manage the making it as tight as possible, but it was, of course, a hard thing to do, and we really pushed ourselves to have that many levels in the game. And in the end, I think it's fun that we have a lot of levels in the game, but I think we could manage with like maybe 75% or 70% of the amount, or maybe less than that. But I'm really proud, though, that we have those levels that we have, because I think all of them are fun. So I mean, it's a balance thing. But to answer your question, we didn't.
No, and I even, as I said, I think a lot of the fight was between Micke wanting to add things and me wanting to cut things.
Yeah.
Since everything that we added was for me to implement. So around that time in January, I think we said, like, as I said, you have these building blocks.
Yeah.
You won't get any more blocks. And we decided we have six levels or six worlds. And also, actually, one thing that we did to manage scope was the fact that, as you know, if you play the game, you come into a world that's quite detailed, and then you meet the spirit and you jump into their subconscious, and you get 4 challenges that are much more diminutive in scope and much more similar in how they look. And that is definitely a scope thing that we decided, like, okay, but if we do it like this, then we can have much more levels than because the initial thought was that everything would look as each of these worlds, and that would have taken forever to do. So we started to do white box, so we could create these levels, and then we could white box challenges and send them to our graphics interns that would just swap the white boxes for these more colorful, the theme of each challenge. And then I remember we were to release in June, and I think the first week of May, Mickey said, "We're gonna do 7th level." To me, and I was like, "No, we're not." Yes, we are.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah, we did. In the end, we did.
In the end, we did.
What was your process for playtesting the game, and what important pieces of information did you learn through playtesting?
Don't listen to the user, or I mean, listen to the user in the right way.
Yeah, we did a lot of playtesting. We had friends coming to play. We went to game fairs or game expos. So we really tried, and I think we played it ourselves.
Millions.
Yeah, we had a QA guy, an intern who was only for QA. We had a lot of in that last 6 months. We had a lot of interns that helped us with graphics and QA and playtesting. I think we had at least 2 people playing the game like all the time. There was always two people playing and testing and making sure that things work. But in terms of, as Mickey said, in terms of getting other people playing, we really learned that you can't listen to what they want. You need to listen to what their frustration is. So, for instance, if you have someone come saying, "I played as the Reaperman. I would like to make thunder and lightning come down. I want to feel more powerful." What they're saying is, "I didn't feel like I had enough to do."
Yeah.
And the same with Carly. When each time they said, "I want something more to do," we instead made sure there was less things to do on the level, so that both players did the same thing at the same time, because that was the most fun.
I think Buddha was really good at that as well. I think he pushed it a lot design wise. Like every time I wanted to go that way, like let's add lightning or whatever. And you as well. You guys always pushed me back there, and I think that also helped contribute, the focus of what the player were doing all the time.
Yeah, I think we for sure found the 6 months we found the last 6 months we found a way to work that was super productive. I think we did more in the last 6 months than we did in the
whole production.
In the whole 2 years before that, or something. The production was about 2.5 years.
Which parts of the game did you have to put the most time and effort into to get it just the way you wanted it?
We can maybe answer that separately. Like for me, from a technical point of view, I would say I put the most time into the physics and the feeling of building with blocks for Reaperman, getting that just right, that was collaboration with everyone saying like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right," and I had to realize what that was. So that was a lot of time for me, but then also just the fact that it was VR on 2 screens in a gaming engine I have never worked with, and there were 2 different sound streams, and so there was a lot of just a lot of frustration, a lot of things. But I think that if the question is what I took the most time to polish, I would think it was that, and yeah, I think it was building actually.
Yeah, the physics and stuff.
Yeah.
There was, do you remember the whole thing being small, being big? And...
Yeah, that as well. That's also not something that Unity doesn't like, when you have like 2 different sizes of things. So yeah, we all.
And 2 cameras. Also.
Yeah. Two cameras, which made the rendering. VR was hard enough, and then we added a 3rd camera to be rendered. Yeah,
and the sound.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy for me to say level design, but I think that's not true, because I think level design went on, a lot during the whole development. Of course, yeah, level design is one of those, but I think
you also put a lot of time and effort into the platforming, the feeling of the platforming character.
Yeah, we had this huge ambition that we wanted to be as good as Mario or whatever, as in the physics and the character moving and feeling of jumping and stuff. And it's really hard to do because there's a lot of
Nintendo good.
Yeah. They put a lot of polish in, like when the character moves and jumps and how it feels being pushed down, and as the game had a lot of constraints because we were doing that kind of game for the first time ever, I think.
Yeah.
No one had done it before. So we had a lot of things to think about besides the character moving around. So that made us, and we only were 3 people, so we had to divide our efforts. So in the end, yeah, I think so too. I think the movement and making everything work, it was.
Yeah, because I remember I did a character with a lot of sliders where you could like up the speed or the jumping force and everything, and you just played and moved those sliders up and down until it became just right.
Yeah, and then there was needed to add animations to work with that was manageable with our little team, and all those. And I think it was pretty much his first time rigging a character and doing stuff on that level. Yeah, it was a lot of hard work.
The entire game is filled with many different puzzles. How do you go about balancing the puzzles so that they weren't so easy that players didn't feel like they accomplished anything, but also not so difficult that players got frustrated and quit?
Testing, I think. Level design, for me at least, it's a lot about pacing. And pacing for me is a lot about feelings, like looking at someone or playing yourself and saying, okay, now they're bored, or now they're frustrated, or now they are whatever. And, trying to, okay, let's cut that part away. I would say it's the same as cutting videos for movies or whatever. I think it's like you have to have a very, sensitive way of approaching it and manipulating the experience in every inch of the way. Like, okay, now they got lost or whatever, and that goes all the way down to the puzzle. As soon as the puzzle becomes too hard or not that easy to understand or whatever, the pacing goes bad, and you have to manage that.
I think you have a point in your question, because when you create a game, you are inherently the best player in the world at your game. So it's very easy to make things too hard because they're easy for you, because you have played that same level like 200 times already. So I think that is something you need to be very wary of when you do the play testing with people who hasn't played. That you look at allow people who've never played, look at how they tackle some the challenges. And
they need to be a lot, as you say, they need to be a lot easier than you
think.
Yeah. But they
it's
also
like, I have sometimes created like pop quizzes for my mother when she's like, I'm gonna have a dinner with my friends. Can you create a pop quiz? And I always try to make them super easy, and she's always like, yeah, she won on 50% right, because I always make them too hard, because that's the way it is. Because for me, it's easy because I know the question, I know the answers, because I created them. And I think it's the same with game design. It's so hard to get that exact right level if you don't test it with a diverse set of players, because it's also easy to just allow someone to play that's a friend of you, or that's also a gamer, and then you, like, for instance, give it to my mother and she won't even get into the first level, because so we try to have like all kinds of people trying. And to be fair, I think we had an advantage because we did a VR game in the early days of VR. So it was quite easy to get people like, it's VR, come and test VR for the first time. And then they could test some fun experience. And then we had them trying our game as well.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before starting work on the game?
It depends. Because if I hadn't had known those things, the game would never have been released. Because I would have left the room screaming. But yeah, I wish. I mean, besides all the things, like it was much harder than we thought, and I think if we knew what we know now, we wouldn't have made the game, which is sad. But if I would just go back and tell myself one thing, I think what would speed up the process would be that thing about cooperation. Like the game is about cooperation. Forget everything else. Just nail cooperation, and you will do a great game. Because it took us probably 1.5 of those 2.5 years. I think for 1.5 years we were like
a bit lost in that.
Lost in the woods, trying to find the path. And when we found the path, the rest was
easier,
quite easy. But I mean, looking at our first builds of the game, they're horrible in many ways. I mean, the core is there, of course, but I mean, we had our very first world was the ground was curved, so you were building on curved, which is, I mean, that's just stupid. so the building experience was horrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, we did ditch that quite fast. But I think the one thing I would tell myself would be focus on cooperation from the beginning.
And also, I think we are doing a new game now, and then I think and that's also hard to do. But I think if you are Nintendo again, because they're good at it, but the good designers there always say like put your character in. If you have a game that's where the focus is to control a character, they always say like put the character in an environment and make it work, like make it feel good to move around the character, make it feel good to interact with the environment. And I think that is something I think that's super key to understand the game and also make it fun and also to get to that insight that Johan talked about, where you kind of nails the focus of the experience. I think that is a really important thing, because when you're going around, like with Carly, we had this strange character running around with really bad control and really floaty physics, and it becomes like you start questioning stuff around it that has nothing to, you go away on different paths trying to solve things that are just in front of you. Like, if it's not fun controlling character, the bomb experience or whatever will not be fun, because it's not fun.
That is very true. I think we exactly. So it's very easy to try a lot of things to make building more fun, like add more blocks, do this, do that. But when it in essence is just make building more fun, make the feeling of building as tight as possible. So that you feel like you're building with actual building blocks. Because if you do, then everything else, or at least if you do that, you will at least do an assumption around the game on a fair ground. Yeah. If you get what I mean.
Because it's like the Shigeru Miyamoto. He said that the producer of Zelda. He said that. We got the Shigeru in a room, and then the chief designer at Nintendo, and he tried Zelda Breath of the Wild out, and the only thing he went around doing was climbing stuff, and that this is really fun. He went like 3 hours just climbing trees or whatever, and then the producers watched him play it, and Shigeru didn't tell them what to do. They just knew that, oh, okay, that's the fun thing about this game. This is what the game is about. Climbing stuff and not having any borders or limitations. Like, I think that's kind of where you can land, but you need to have this ground, the basic things being fun to do.
Yeah.
What was your process for creating the story of the game, and how did you go about building the world from a story standpoint?
So I would say the story was in many parts. I mean, we all collaborated on everything, but I think the story was in many parts a collaboration between Micke and Buddha, the artist. So the main story. Do you remember how we got the main story about saving souls and?
Yeah, I think so. The idea was to save souls. Came about where thinking about where the game should go and where it should be played out. So we decided on the world and the Reaperman and how should Reaperman look and what should Reaperman do.
Yeah, I think because we had this big character and a small character, and I don't really know why we decided the big character would be the Reaperman, but it puts just something that one day it was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like that would be fun.
It started with Carly because we wanted her to be stuck in underworld. That basic concept of where she was, the story of her like trying to escape the underworld. I think that concept was pretty early. We weren't sure about
who would have
a big
her
character and who he or she was. So
we decided very early on that the main protagonist would be a girl,
teenage girl,
a teenage girl, and we wanted a female character that was like cool in her own right, like Super Mario but female in the way that, I mean, because we spoke about that. I mean, Super Mario is like a little bit overweight plumber with an ugly ass mustache and weird clothes, and we spoke sometime about the fact that a girl in a game would never be allowed to look like that. So we wanted to do something that was more in line with that. And then, I mean, Carl isn't all the way there, but we wanted something where she was a girl that was definitely not a like Lara Croft like character, more a badass teenage girl with a bit of attitude and
the same, not the same, but like Luigi Mario kind of body.
Yeah. So that was that, and then as we said, Buddha, as with the Bangladeshi background, he added the story elements of the war and all of the, like in the game there are white crows that will tell you cryptical messages that gives you a bit of a lore or some insights as to who this character that you are saving is, and all of that comes from Buddha. He has written all of them. And also, he was the one deciding who the character that you were saving were. So he decided which he had a roster of several characters, and then they decided on 7 of them to put in the game. And I think, and Mikke on the other hand put a lot of focus on the trebuchet, who's that guy with a bucket on his head in the hub world, and on what he was saying. So you can say
that's true. Actually, I was like kind of talking a lot about Carly and where she was headed and her experience basically. Yeah. And Buddha put his effort where the characters each level and stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to make it's maybe not entirely true, but true enough, I would say that a lot of the emotional stuff is Buddha, and a lot of the humorous, funny stuff is Mikke.
True.
Can fans of the game expect to see new content in the future?
We're not going to do any DLCs or anything, I think, for this game. I mean, not planned at least. I wouldn't rule out a sequel, but we're not doing one right now. And we have a publisher who now are more responsible for the continuation of the game, and they are also responsible for porting to new platforms and whatnot. So they have free hands. So if they would tell us we want to do a DLC, then yeah, why not? But I don't think it will happen.
It also a bit the platform VR and where the industry and the platforms are doing. It's a bit hard to tell right now, I think, where VR is headed generally. I mean, you have Oculus who's doing their stuff, but we don't know. Yeah, is it like Quest, whatever, 2, 3, and they have Steam and Valve and what they're doing, and then they have Sony, and that's pretty much it right now.
But we do love our characters, and we love the game, and we're super proud of it. We're still think that we did something quite unique and something that can be built upon, because I mean, just the fact that we're sitting here discussing this game that's 5 years old or something, and still people find our game all the time. I think we have at least as many downloads now as we had the first year, so we have more. So yeah, the game is
TBC on where it's going.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge that both of you have faced while working on the game?
For me, the whole game was a big challenge, actually. And there was a lot of technical challenges. I mentioned the fact that there's 2 different sound streams, that there are 3 screens instead of 2, that you need to render at a very high frame rate to not get nauseated. The fact that there's 2 controllers at the same time to control different characters. And the fact that it's VR, and when we started, there was no VR toolkit or anything. Everything in the game has been done like grounds up. So that was a huge challenge, and the fact that there wasn't any games like this, we couldn't look at someone else and see how did they do this, because we were pretty much venturing uncharted territory.
And also, I think the on top of all this, Johan and we were not founded in any way. So we worked part-time during the day at our regular jobs, and then during the other part of the day, we worked at Carly, which was...
Yeah, we were both freelancers and game developers at the same time. So we worked more or less 2 jobs, both of us, and trying to run a company. So yeah, we had a lot of challenges.
And it wasn't like 6 months. It was almost 3 years. So I think it was really hard work, I would say.
Yeah, I even managed to time a freelance job where I was to release a mobile app. I don't know if it was the same day or like the day before or the day after, but it was very, very tight with what our release schedule was. So I worked calling the Reaperman during the day. Then I went home, ate dinner, said hi to my kids, and then I sat down and worked another 8 hours on the app. Slept a few hours, went up, worked on calling the Reaperman. So I had 2 work days, one in the night where I was an app developer. So that was, but I mean, it was, and I wouldn't recommend that for anyone. But it worked. I think that was my situation for maybe between 2 weeks and a month, and it works for that period of time.
But that extreme thing, yeah.
And especially if you know that there's an end to it.
Yeah.
So otherwise you get burnt out. But yeah.
It was not a healthy...
It was not a healthy work environment, for sure. No.
But now we have, with that experience being done, I think we have learned a lot. And it was, a really good experience in that perspective.
What would be your biggest piece of advice to a newer game dev trying to go and create their first game?
Create a game that you like. Don't care so much about whether it's going to sell or not. If you do a game that you like a lot, chances are someone else will as well. And I also think don't have too high hopes. If you're a small indie dev, don't have too high hopes that you will sell very, very many of your game. But finishing a game and releasing a game in itself is an achievement, because our game, called the Reaperman, is definitely not paying our bills now. It's not selling it nearly enough, but it was something that we could use to get funding for our next game, to show that, look, we can ship a game, we can finish a game that's polished and good and innovative in some ways. So just, I think that would be my advice, at least.
I agree. It's a really good advice. Just trying to get a game out there, get people experience it and releasing it and developing it. We get you so far with a lot of experience, and then you can take, you're on a new platform and can take another step and you can grow with that experience. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
What's next for both of you? What are you both working on now?
Trying to rob a bank.
No, it's a secret, actually. We're doing our second game, and we have been almost since releasing Carly and the Reaperman. I think we worked maybe a year more with that game. We can't really say what the new game is, but it's not VR. And so here's another advice. If you do a game in a certain genre, next time you do a game, do one in the same genre. Don't switch as we did, because that's like learning to walk from the beginning. So that's what a lot of what we have been doing is learning to walk from the beginning again, because we decided to do something entirely different this time around.
It's still a game, but it's for PC and console.
Yes, and vastly different in scope and
everything,
genre and everything. So yeah.
So nothing that we learned with Carly, pretty much we can use.
No.
But we are a few years in now, and it's going forward. I think played it today. It was, I haven't told you, but it was really fun.
Good.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great interviewing both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the interview. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow and subscribe so that you can stay up to date with what's going on with Game Design Hour. Also, consider giving us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you think a friend might like the show, make sure to share it with them. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Game Design Hour, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at Game Design Hour. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you next time.